The December wind sliced through Manhattan like a blade, rattling the towering glass windows of the Whitmore Grand Hotel. Inside the opulent lobby, beneath crystal chandeliers that refracted light into 1,000 dancing fragments, chaos was unfolding in the most unexpected way. Harper Quinn stood frozen near the marble reception desk, her new uniform still crisp and unfamiliar against her skin. It was 9:47 a.m. on her first day, and she was supposed to be learning the seating chart for the hotel's signature restaurant. Instead, she found herself witnessing something that made her forget everything else. A child's scream cut through the refined atmosphere like shattered glass. Near the center of the lobby, beside a fountain sculpture that cost more than most people's homes, an 8-year-old boy sat on the floor, his small body rigid with terror. His hands clutched at his ears, his face contorted in an expression of pure anguish. Dark sunglasses covered his eyes, but they couldn't hide the tears streaming down his pale cheeks. "Ethan, please," a woman in an expensive suit pleaded, her voice tight with desperation. She was the third nanny in 6 months, and everyone could see she was already breaking. "You need to calm down, your father will be here soon." But Ethan Whitmore wasn't listening. His screams intensified, a wordless howl that spoke of something deeper than a simple tantrum. Hotel guests turned to stare, their expensive luggage forgotten. A businessman on his phone paused mid-sentence. A family checking in pulled their children closer, uncertain and uncomfortable. Harper watched as 2 more staff members approached. Gerald, the senior concierge with 20 years of experience, and Patricia, the guest relations manager who prided herself on handling any situation with grace. They exchanged worried glances before kneeling beside the boy. "Master Whitmore," Gerald began, his voice professionally soothing, "why don't we go to the private lounge? It's quieter there." Ethan's response was to curl tighter into himself, his screams becoming hoarse. His small hands moved frantically in the air, as if trying to grasp something that wasn't there. From across the lobby, Harper noticed a tall man emerge from the private elevator bank. Marcus Whitmore moved through the space like someone who owned it, because he did. At 42, he had built a hotel empire that stretched across 3 continents, but right now his face showed only the exhausted defeat of a father who had run out of answers. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, his dark hair swept back with precision, but there were shadows under his eyes that no amount of money could erase. He walked toward his son with the gait of someone approaching a battlefield, where he'd already lost too many times. "Ethan," Marcus said, his voice firm but strained. He didn't kneel. He stood above his son, hands in his pockets, as if physical distance could somehow make this easier. "We've talked about this. You can't do this here. Not in the lobby. Not in front of—" Another scream cut him off. Ethan's hands found the marble floor and slapped against it, the sharp sound echoing through the cavernous space. Harper felt something twist in her chest. She'd seen this before, not in hotels or among billionaires, but in the small nonprofit center where she'd volunteered for 3 years. She recognized the signs. Sensory overload, panic, the desperate need for something to anchor to in a world that had become too loud, too bright, too overwhelming. Everyone around Ethan was trying to fix him. No one was trying to understand him. She shouldn't interfere. It was her first day. She was a hostess, not a miracle worker. The rational part of her brain screamed at her to stay invisible, to let the experienced staff handle it, to not risk her new job before she'd even started it properly. But Harper had never been particularly good at listening to the rational part of her brain. She set down her leather folder and walked forward, her footsteps deliberate and slow. The lobby seemed to expand around her, every eye tracking her movement. She could feel Gerald's confused stare, Patricia's sharp intake of breath, Marcus Whitmore's sudden, intense focus. When she was 3 feet away, she did something no one expected. She stopped walking. She didn't rush forward. She didn't reach out to touch him. Instead, Harper slowly lowered herself to sit on the floor, cross-legged, at a careful distance from Ethan. She didn't speak immediately. She just sat there, present but not intrusive, existing in his space without demanding anything from him. The boy's screaming began to falter, confusion breaking through his panic. His head tilted slightly as if trying to understand this new presence. Harper waited 3 more seconds, counting her own heartbeats. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, quiet enough that Ethan would have to strain to hear it, quiet enough to cut through the chaos, she began to speak. "There's a fountain beside you," she said softly. "The water sounds like rain on a window. Can you hear it? 12 streams of water falling into a pool that's smooth like glass. The water hits the surface and makes tiny circles that spread out, wider and wider, until they disappear. Ethan's hand stopped moving. His body remained tense, but something had shifted. He was listening. Harper continued, her voice steady and clear. Above us there's a chandelier. It's made of thousands of crystals. When the air conditioning blows, they touch each other and make the softest sound, like wind chimes, but smaller, quieter. You have to be very still to hear it. The boy's breathing started to slow. His head turned slightly toward her voice. Marcus Whitmore stood motionless, his expression unreadable. Around them, the lobby had gone silent. Even the fountain seemed to quiet, as if the entire building was holding its breath. The floor under you is marble, Harper went on, her tone never wavering. It's cold and smooth. If you tap it with your knuckles, it sounds different than wood. Harder, like knocking on a door, but heavier. There are patterns in it, swirls and lines that look like rivers from far away. Your hand is resting on a light part right now. If you move it 2 inches to your left, you'll feel where it gets darker, cooler. Ethan's fingers moved experimentally, searching for the change she'd described. When he found it, his breathing hitched. Not in panic this time, but in something like wonder. Who are you? The boy's voice was hoarse from screaming, but the words were clear, direct. Harper smiled, though he couldn't see it. My name is Harper. I'm new here. It's my first day, actually. This lobby is pretty overwhelming, isn't it? A pause. Then barely audible. Yes. Too many sounds all at once? Everything's too loud. Ethan's hands had stopped trembling. It feels like everything's pushing on me. I understand, Harper said simply. Sometimes when everything gets too loud, it helps to focus on just one thing. Just one sound or one feeling. Like the fountain. Can we listen to just the fountain for a minute? Nothing else. Just that one sound. Ethan nodded slowly. His posture began to relax, his shoulders dropping from around his ears. They sat in silence. This woman no one knew and this child no one could reach, while the fountain provided a gentle rhythm. 30 seconds passed. A minute. The tension in the lobby began to dissolve like morning fog. Finally, Ethan spoke again. You described things differently. How so? Everyone else tells me what things look like. Colors and shapes. But I can't remember colors anymore. I can't picture shapes. You told me what things sound like. What they feel like. His voice cracked slightly. That's better. Harper felt her throat tighten. I'm glad that helped. Behind her, she heard movement. Marcus Whitmore taking a step closer. But she kept her focus on Ethan, not turning around. Can you describe something else? The boy asked. What would you like to know about? Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering. The people. Everyone walking around. What do they sound like? And so Harper described the lobby not as a visual space, but as a living soundscape. The businessman's confident stride, his shoes clicking like a metronome. The family with children, their footsteps uneven and scattered like raindrops. The rustle of clothing, the whisper of dragged luggage wheels, the soft conversation that ebbed and flowed like tides. She built him a world he could understand. When she finally finished, Ethan was calm. His hands rested loosely in his lap. His breathing was even. The storm had passed. Master Whitmore? Gerald's voice broke the spell, uncertain. Should we? No. Marcus Whitmore's voice was quiet but absolute. Don't interrupt. Harper finally looked up and met the man's gaze. His gray eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something more complicated. Shock, perhaps, or recognition of something he didn't want to acknowledge. Miss, he began. Quinn, she supplied. Harper Quinn. Miss Quinn. He said her name like he was memorizing it. What exactly did you just do? Harper rose to her feet slowly, careful not to startle Ethan. I just listened, Mr. Whitmore, and then I told him what I heard. For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Around them, the lobby was returning to normal. Guests moving again, staff resuming their duties. But this small circle of space remained charged, suspended. Ethan, Marcus finally said, his voice softer than before. Are you all right? The boy nodded. I'm okay now. Marcus's jaw tightened. Harper saw something flash across his face. Relief, certainly, but also something darker. Something that looked almost like shame. Miss Quinn, Patricia approached, her professional smile back in place but her eyes still wide with surprise. I think we should discuss your initiative, perhaps in my office. Harper knew what that meant. She'd overstepped. First day, and she'd already broken protocol. But as she glanced down at Ethan, who was now sitting peacefully, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Of course, she said evenly. As she turned to follow Patricia, Marcus Whitmore spoke again. Miss Quinn, wait. She stopped, turning back to face him. "Thank you," he said simply. 2 words that seemed to cost him something to say. "Whatever happens next, I wanted to say that first." Harper nodded, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had no idea what she just set in motion, but as she walked away from the fountain and the boy and the man who owned everything except the ability to reach his own son, she felt certain of one thing. Her first day at the Whitmore Grand Hotel was going to change everything. Patricia's office was located on the 3rd floor, tucked away in a corridor that guests never saw. The walls were a sterile beige, decorated with framed certificates of excellence and photos of Patricia shaking hands with various dignitaries. Everything about the space screamed control, order, and adherence to rules, the exact opposite of what Harper had just done in the lobby. "Please, sit." Patricia gestured to a leather chair across from her immaculate desk. Her smile hadn't wavered, but her eyes were calculating, assessing. Harper sat, keeping her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap. She'd been through enough job interviews to know how to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Patricia settled into her own chair with the precision of someone who'd perfected the art of intimidation through professionalism. "Miss Quinn, you've been employed here for exactly..." She glanced at her computer screen. 3 hours and 47 minutes. In that time, you've managed to do something that our entire staff, including child psychologists and specially trained caregivers, has failed to accomplish in 6 months. Harper waited. She'd learned long ago that sometimes silence was the best response. That was either extraordinarily brave or extraordinarily foolish, Patricia continued. "I haven't decided which yet." "With respect, Miss Chen," Harper said carefully, "I don't think it was either. It was necessary." Patricia's eyebrow arched. "Necessary? We have protocols, Miss Quinn. Procedures for handling situations involving Mr. Whitmore's son. You completely bypassed all of them. Your protocols weren't working." Harper kept her voice steady, professional. "That child was in genuine distress. Sometimes protocols need to give way to human connection." "Human connection?" Patricia repeated the words as if they were foreign. "This is a 5-star hotel, not a therapy center. Our staff are trained to maintain appropriate boundaries, especially with the owner's family." "I maintained boundaries," Harper countered. "I didn't touch him. I didn't invade his space. I simply gave him something to focus on besides his panic." Patricia leaned back, studying her. The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Harper could feel her new job slipping away, could already imagine the conversation where she'd have to explain to her roommate why she'd been fired on her first day. A knock on the door interrupted the tension. "Come in," Patricia called, her irritation barely concealed. The door opened, and Marcus Whitmore stepped inside. He'd removed his suit jacket, and his tie was loosened. Small concessions to the stress of the morning. His presence immediately changed the atmosphere of the room, making it somehow smaller despite his relatively average height. It was the kind of presence that came from years of making decisions that affected thousands of lives. "Mr. Whitmore." Patricia stood immediately, her professional mask snapping back into place. "I was just discussing the incident with Miss Quinn. I assure you appropriate measures will be..." "Patricia." His voice was quiet, but absolute. "Give us the room." Patricia's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes flickered between Harper and Marcus, confusion and concern warring on her face. "Sir, I really think that wasn't a request." The guest relations manager gathered her tablet and phone with movements that were just slightly too sharp to be called graceful. As she passed Marcus on her way out, she said quietly, "I'll be right outside if you need anything." The door clicked shut with a finality that made Harper's pulse quicken. Marcus Whitmore didn't sit. Instead, he moved to the window, looking out over the city skyline. From this height, Manhattan was a forest of steel and glass, beautiful and impersonal. He stood there for a long moment, his back to Harper, his hands in his pockets. "My son hasn't had a calm moment in public in 6 months, he said finally. His voice was different now, less controlled, more raw. 6 months of therapy, specialists, medication trials. 6 months of watching him suffer and being completely powerless to help him." Harper remained silent, sensing that he needed to say this. "And then you..." He turned to face her, his gray eyes intense. "You sit down on the floor of my hotel lobby and in 5 minutes accomplish what dozens of trained professionals couldn't manage in half a year. Mr. Whitmore, how?" The question came out sharper than he probably intended. "How did you know what to do?" Harper took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "I volunteered for 3 years at the Riverside Center for the Blind. It's a small nonprofit in Brooklyn. We worked primarily with children who'd lost their sight or were born without it. I learned that the worst thing you can do is try to force them back into a sighted person's way of experiencing the world. You have to meet them where they are. Marcus absorbed this information, his expression unreadable. The employment file Patricia showed me this morning said you were a hostess. It didn't mention any of that. It wasn't relevant to the job requirements. Apparently, it was the most relevant thing about you. Another silence fell, but this one felt different, charged with possibility rather than tension. Marcus moved away from the window, finally taking the seat Patricia had vacated. He sat forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. It was a posture of honesty, of vulnerability that Harper suspected few people ever saw from him. Ethan lost his sight in a car accident 14 months ago, he said quietly. We were coming back from his mother's funeral. I was driving. There was black ice on the road and I lost control. His voice remained steady, but Harper could hear the weight behind each word. The airbag deployed wrong. The impact damaged his optic nerves irreparably. He was 7 years old. Harper felt her chest tighten. Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry. He lost his mother and his sight in the same week. Marcus looked down at his hands, and his father became a ghost. I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that made sense anymore, the only thing I could still control. I convinced myself I was providing for him, securing his future. But I was really just running away from the fact that I had no idea how to help him navigate his new reality. The honesty in his admission took Harper by surprise. This wasn't the cold billionaire she'd expected. This was a man drowning in guilt and grief, trying desperately to keep his head above water. For the past year, I've hired every specialist, tried every technique. I've spent more money than most people see in a lifetime and nothing worked. Ethan grew more isolated, more angry, more lost. Marcus finally looked up at her. And then you showed up on your first day and did what I should have been able to do all along. You saw him. Mr. Whitmore. Marcus, please. Harper nodded slowly. Marcus, what happened in the lobby wasn't magic. It wasn't some special technique that requires years of training. It was just paying attention, listening to what he needed instead of trying to impose what we think he needs. That simple? That difficult? She corrected gently. Because it requires letting go of control. It requires being willing to sit in the discomfort and uncertainty with him instead of trying to fix it immediately. Marcus leaned back, running a hand through his hair. For the first time since entering the room, he looked less like a powerful executive and more like an exhausted father. I have a proposition for you, Miss Quinn. Harper's stomach tightened. I'm listening. I need someone who can help Ethan. Not another specialist who's going to treat him like a problem to be solved. Someone who understands him. Someone who can. He paused, searching for the right words. Translate the world for him the way you did today. You're asking me to be his caregiver? I'm asking you to be whatever he needs you to be. Marcus stood pacing now, his business mind clearly working through the logistics. You'd still be employed by the hotel, but your primary responsibility would be Ethan. I'd triple your current salary. You'd have access to resources, transportation, whatever you need. I'm not asking you to replace his therapists or his tutors. I'm asking you to be the person who can actually reach him. Harper's mind raced. This was insane. She'd come here for a simple hostess position, and now she was being offered what amounted to a complete career change. I'm not qualified. I don't have any formal training in child psychology or credentials don't mean anything if they can't help my son. Marcus interrupted. You have something better than credentials. You have instinct. You have genuine compassion. And for reasons I don't entirely understand, Ethan responded to you. This is a massive responsibility, Mr. Whit. Marcus. I know. He stopped pacing, facing her directly. I'm asking a lot. Too much, probably. And I'll understand if you say no. But I'm desperate, Miss Quinn. I'm watching my son disappear a little more each day, and I don't know how to stop it. Today, for the first time in months, I saw a glimpse of the boy he used to be. That was because of you. Harper looked at this powerful man who'd just laid bare his most vulnerable truth. She thought about Ethan, sitting on that marble floor, lost in a world that had become incomprehensible to him. She thought about the 3 years she'd spent at the Riverside Center, the children she'd connected with, the difference she'd been able to make in their lives. This was terrifying. This could go wrong in 1,000 different ways. She could fail spectacularly. She could make things worse, but she could also help. I need to think about it, she said finally. This isn't a decision I can make in 5 minutes. Marcus nodded, and she saw respect flash across his face. Fair enough. Take the rest of the day. Talk to whoever you need to talk to. But I need an answer by tomorrow morning. He pulled a business card from his wallet and wrote something on the back. My personal number. Call me when you've decided. Harper took the card, her fingers brushing against his briefly. The card was heavy, expensive. Everything about Marcus Whitmore spoke of resources and power. But right now, all she saw was a father who'd lost his way. One question, she said, as he moved toward the door. Yes? Why me? You don't know me. For all you know, what happened today was a fluke. Marcus paused, his hand on the doorknob. When he turned back, his expression was completely serious. Because when you sat down next to my son, you didn't look at me for permission or approval. You didn't think about your job or the rules or what people would think. You just saw a child who needed help and you helped him. That kind of instinct can't be taught. He opened the door, but before leaving, he added one more thing. Ethan asked about you after you left. He wanted to know if you were coming back. In 14 months, that's the first time he's asked about anyone. Then he was gone, leaving Harper alone in Patricia's office with a business card in her hand and a decision that would change everything. Through the window, the city continued its indifferent rhythm. Somewhere in this building was a boy who'd lost almost everything but was still fighting to find his way. And somehow, impossibly, Harper had become his best chance at finding the light again. She looked down at the card, at the hastily scrawled numbers on the back. Tomorrow morning seemed both impossibly far away and terrifyingly close. Harper's apartment in Brooklyn was a fourth-floor walk-up with temperamental heating and a view of a brick wall, but it was hers. She climbed the stairs slowly that evening, her mind still churning through everything that had happened. The business card in her pocket felt like it weighed 10 pounds. Her roommate Zoe was sprawled on their second-hand couch, laptop balanced on her knees, when Harper walked in. Zoe worked remotely as a graphic designer, which meant she was always home and always curious about Harper's life. You're back early, Zoe said without looking up. How was day one at the fancy hotel? Did you meet any celebrities? Did someone tip you $100 for bringing them water? Harper dropped her bag by the door and collapsed into the armchair across from her. I might have just been offered the strangest job opportunity of my life. That got Zoe's attention. Her laptop snapped shut. I'm listening. For the next 30 minutes, Harper recounted the entire day. Ethan's breakdown, her intervention, the conversation with Marcus Whitmore. Zoe listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern, to something that looked almost like awe. So let me get this straight, Zoe said when Harper finished. A billionaire wants to pay you triple your salary to basically be his traumatized son's companion? And you're actually considering saying no? It's not that simple. It kind of is, though. Zoe leaned forward. Harper, you've been looking for meaningful work since the Riverside Center lost its funding. You've been miserable every day, knowing you were going to be seating people at restaurant tables instead of actually making a difference. Now someone's literally handing you a chance to do what you're good at and you're hesitating. Because what if I can't help him? Harper's voice cracked slightly. What if today was just luck? What if I make things worse? Zoe was quiet for a moment, then said gently, or what if you actually help this kid find his way again? What if you're exactly what he needs? Harper stared at the ceiling, where a water stain vaguely resembled a cloud. His father is desperate, I saw it in his eyes. That kind of desperation, that kind of hope, it's terrifying to be responsible for. You remember what you told me when you came back from your first day at Riverside? Zoe asked. You said you'd met a 6-year-old girl named Maya who hadn't spoken in 3 months. You spent an entire afternoon just sitting with her, describing the sounds in the room. By the end of the day, she'd said 5 words. 5 words that her parents thought they'd never hear again. Harper did remember. Maya had whispered, I hear the birds outside. It was one of the best moments of Harper's life. You have a gift for this, Harper. Not everyone does. And yeah, it's scary to be needed that much. But isn't it scarier to walk away and spend the rest of your life wondering what might have happened if you'd tried? Harper pulled out Marcus's business card, turning it over in her hands. The paper was thick, expensive. His personal number was written in confident, angular handwriting. What do you think I should do? She asked. Zoe smiled. I think you already know. You just needed someone to tell you it's okay to take the risk. That night, Harper barely slept. She lay in bed staring at the shadows on her ceiling, playing through every possible scenario. She thought about Ethan's face when he'd finally calmed down, the way his rigid body had slowly relaxed as she described the world around him. She thought about Marcus's raw admission of failure, the guilt that clearly consumed him. At 3 in the morning, she made her decision. At 8 a.m., she called the number on the card. Marcus answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the early hour. "Miss Quinn, I'll do it," Harper said simply. "But I have conditions." There was a pause, then, "I'm listening. I won't work in the hotel. Ethan needs a space that's separate from your business, somewhere that can be his own. And I need you to commit to being present. I can help translate the world for him, but he needs his father. Not your money or your resources. You." Another pause. Longer this time. When Marcus spoke, his voice was rough. "You're asking me to be a better parent. I'm asking you to be present. There's a difference." "All right," he said finally. "My penthouse has a separate wing that Ethan barely uses. We can set up a proper space there, and I'll adjust my schedule. One more thing," Harper added. "This only works if Ethan wants it. I won't force myself into his life. He gets to choose whether I stay." "Agreed." Marcus's voice carried something that sounded like relief. "Can you start today? Give me 2 hours to handle some things, then yes. I'll send a car to your address at 10:30. Harper hung up and sat on the edge of her bed, her heart pounding. Zoe appeared in her doorway, already dressed, holding out a cup of coffee. "You said yes." "I said yes." "Good." Zoe grinned. "Now go change the world, one kid at a time." The car that arrived at 10:30 was a sleek black sedan with a driver who introduced himself as James. He was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. As they navigated through morning traffic toward the Upper East Side, he made polite conversation. "Master Ethan is a good boy," James said, his eyes on the road. "Quiet, though. Wasn't always that way. Before the accident, he used to talk my ear off every ride. Asked a million questions about everything." "What changed?" Harper asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "The world stopped making sense to him, I think. Hard to ask questions when you can't trust your own experience anymore." James glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Mr. Whitmore mentioned you helped the boy yesterday. First time I've seen him smile in months when we got home." Harper felt that familiar pressure in her chest, the weight of expectation, of hope. "I just listened to him. Sometimes that's everything," James said quietly. The Whitmore penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a building that overlooked Central Park. The private elevator opened directly into a foyer that was all marble and modern art. But despite the obvious wealth, there was something cold about the space. It was beautiful but unlived in, like a museum rather than a home. Marcus was waiting in the foyer, dressed more casually than yesterday. Dark jeans and a crisp white shirt, no tie. He looked like he hadn't slept much either. "Miss Quinn." He extended his hand and she shook it. His grip was firm, professional. "Thank you for coming. Ethan's in his room. He knows you're here." How did he react? He didn't say much, but he got dressed without being asked, which hasn't happened in weeks. Marcus led her through the penthouse, down a hallway lined with photographs. Harper noticed that most of them featured a beautiful woman with dark hair and Ethan's same blue eyes. His mother. In the pictures, she was laughing, radiant, alive. Ethan looked like her. The same delicate features, the same smile that could light up a room. They stopped outside a door decorated with a simple wooden plaque. "Ethan's space." "I'll let you go in alone," Marcus said. "I'll be in my study if you need anything." Harper nodded, taking a breath to steady herself. Then she knocked. 3 gentle taps. "Come in," came a small voice from inside. The room was surprisingly simple for a billionaire's son. A bed with navy blue sheets, a desk, shelves lined with books that were probably never read now, and a large window overlooking the park. Ethan sat in a chair by that window, his dark sunglasses on, his hands folded in his lap. He was wearing jeans and a sweater, his feet bare. "Hi, Ethan," Harper said softly, staying near the door. "It's Harper, from yesterday." "I know." His voice was quiet, but clear. "You sound the same. Can I come in?" He nodded once, a small, careful gesture. Harper moved into the room slowly, letting her footsteps announce her progress. She didn't approach him directly. Instead, she walked to the window, standing a few feet to his left. "The park looks beautiful from up here," she said. "The trees are mostly bare now, but you can see the shape of them against the sky, like dark lace. There are people down there, tiny from this height. Joggers, dog walkers. Someone's flying a kite even though there's barely any wind." Ethan turned his head slightly toward her voice. "Do you always describe things like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're painting a picture with words." Harper smiled. "I guess I do. Is that okay?" "Yeah." He paused, then added quietly, "Nobody else does that. They just tell me colors and shapes like that's supposed to mean something." "Colors and shapes don't tell the whole story," Harper agreed. Harper. She moved to sit on the floor near his chair, not too close. Ethan, your dad asked me to spend time with you, to help you navigate things, but I want to know what you think about that. He was silent for a long moment. His fingers drummed against his knee, a nervous habit, Harper noted. Finally, he said, "Why did you help me yesterday?" "Because you needed help and I knew how to give it. Everyone tries to help me. Doctors, therapists, the nannies. None of them understand." "Understand what?" Ethan's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "That I'm not broken. I'm just different now. They all want to fix me, to make me like I was before. But I can't be that person anymore. He's gone." Harper felt tears prick at her eyes, but she kept her voice steady. "You're not broken, Ethan. You're adapting to a new way of experiencing the world. That's not the same as being broken. And you're right. You're not the same person you were before, but that doesn't mean the person you are now is less valuable. My dad thinks I'm broken." The statement hung in the air like smoke. Harper chose her next words very carefully. "I think your dad is scared. He almost lost you in that accident and now he doesn't know how to reach you. Fear makes people act in strange ways. But it doesn't mean he thinks you're broken. It means he doesn't know how to help, and that terrifies him." Ethan turned fully toward her now, his expression unreadable behind the dark glasses. "You talked to him about me." "I did. He loves you very much, Ethan. He's just lost about how to show it right now." Another long silence. Then, so quietly Harper almost missed it. "Will you stay? Do you want me to?" "I think so." He hesitated, then added, "Yesterday, when you described the fountain and the people, for the first time in forever I could see things again. Not with my eyes, but in my head. You made the world make sense." Harper felt something settle in her chest, certainty, purpose. "Then I'll stay. But we do this as a team, okay? You tell me what helps and what doesn't. You're in charge of your own experience. I'm just here to help translate when things get confusing." Ethan nodded slowly. Then he did something unexpected. He reached out his hand, palm up, in Harper's direction. She took it gently. His hand was small, fragile, but his grip was surprisingly firm. "Can you describe the park again?" he asked. "Everything you see, every detail." And so Harper did. She described the joggers' rhythms, the dog's excited movements, the way the wind moved through the bare branches like invisible fingers. She described the clouds, the distant sounds of the city, the way the sunlight painted everything in shades of winter gold. Ethan listened, his face turned toward the window, and for the first time in 14 months, he smiled. Behind them, unnoticed in the doorway, Marcus Whitmore stood watching, his hand pressed against his mouth, his eyes bright with tears he wouldn't let fall. Harper had been right about one thing. This was terrifying, but maybe, just maybe, it was also exactly where she was supposed to be. 3 weeks into her new role, Harper had established a routine with Ethan that felt almost natural. Mornings were spent in what they'd started calling the description hours. Harper would take him through the penthouse, the building, sometimes even short walks in Central Park, narrating everything in vivid sensory detail. Afternoons were for tactile exploration, braille lessons, cooking together, learning to navigate spaces through sound and touch. But it was the small victories that meant the most. Ethan laughing at a joke, Ethan asking questions again, Ethan willingly leaving his room without being coaxed. Marcus had kept his promise about being more present, though present was a relative term. He'd reduced his office hours and worked from home 3 days a week, but even when he was physically there, Harper could feel the distance he maintained. He'd observe from doorways, listen from adjacent rooms, but rarely engage directly. It was as if he was afraid that getting too close would somehow shatter the fragile progress they'd made. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything started to unravel. Harper and Ethan were in the kitchen, a massive space of stainless steel and marble that looked like it belonged in a professional restaurant. They were making chocolate chip cookies, which had become Ethan's favorite activity. He loved the tactile process, measuring ingredients by weight, feeling the texture of dough transform under his hands, the warmth of the oven, the smell that filled the entire penthouse. "The dough feels different today," Ethan said, his fingers working through the mixture. "Grainier." "Good observation," Harper encouraged. "I use brown sugar instead of white. Can you feel how it has more texture?" "Yeah, and it smells different too. Deeper, kind of." "Exactly. Brown sugar has molasses in it, which gives it that richer scent." They were forming the dough into balls when Marcus emerged from his study. Harper had learned to read his moods by now. The set of his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. Today, something was wrong. "Ethan," Marcus said, his voice carefully controlled. "We need to talk." Ethan's hand stilled in the dough. About what? Doctor, Brennan called. You missed your appointment this morning. Harper felt her stomach drop. She'd forgotten to check the calendar. The weekly therapy session with Dr. Brennan, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma, was supposed to be non-negotiable. I didn't want to go, Ethan said quietly. That's not how this works. Doctor, Brennan is helping you process. He's not helping. Ethan's voice rose slightly. He just asks the same questions over and over. How do I feel about the accident? Am I angry? Am I sad? Like putting words to it is going to change anything. Marcus's jaw tightened. Harper could see him struggling to maintain patience. Therapy takes time, Ethan. You can't just stop going because it's uncomfortable. I'm not going back. Yes, you are. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Ethan's hands clenched in the dough, his knuckles white. Harper recognized the signs, the rigid posture, the shallow breathing. He was approaching overload. Marcus, Harper said carefully, maybe we could. This doesn't concern you, Miss Quinn. His tone was polite but firm, a reminder of the boundary between them. She was an employee, not family. Harper stepped back, but kept her eyes on Ethan. His breathing was getting faster. You can't make me go, Ethan said, his voice trembling now. You can't make me do anything. I'm your father. It's my job to make sure you get the help you need. Like you helped before? The words came out like venom. Like you helped when Mom died? When you disappeared into your office for months? When you hired strangers to take care of me because you couldn't stand to look at me? The silence that followed was devastating. Marcus's face had gone pale. Ethan, that's not... You think I don't know? Ethan's voice cracked. You think I can't hear it in your voice? Every time you talk to me, you sound guilty. Like I'm this constant reminder of everything that went wrong. You can barely stand to be in the same room as me for more than 10 minutes. That's not true. But Marcus's voice lacked conviction. Then why does Harper spend more time with me than you do? Why does she know what I need before I even ask? But you still don't know how to talk to me without it feeling like a business meeting? Harper wanted to intervene to somehow diffuse this before it exploded further, but she was paralyzed by the raw truth of Ethan's words. I'm trying, Marcus said, and there was genuine pain in his voice now. I know I haven't been the father you needed, but I'm trying to do better. Trying isn't enough, Ethan shouted. The dough ball in his hands exploded as he squeezed it, bits flying across the counter. I needed you after the accident. I needed you after Mom died, but you weren't there. You hired people to be there instead. Marcus took a step forward, then stopped, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides. I didn't know how to help you, I still don't. Everything I do seems to make things worse. So you give up? You just pay someone else to figure it out? That's not what Harper is. Harper's not my parent. Ethan's hands were shaking now, feeling frantically across the counter for something to anchor to. Harper's amazing, and I'm grateful she's here, but she's not you. She can't be you. The words hung in the air like broken glass. Harper saw something crack in Marcus's expression, the careful control he'd maintained for weeks, finally shattering. You're right, he said quietly. She can't be me, and maybe that's better, because I've failed you in every way that matters. Marcus, Harper started, but he held up a hand. No, he's right. Marcus looked at his son, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in months. After your mother died, I fell apart. I couldn't function. The only thing that kept me from completely losing my mind was work. It was the only place where things made sense, where I had control, but I used it as an excuse. I hid from you because looking at you meant confronting everything I'd lost, everything I'd failed to protect. Ethan had gone still, his face turned toward his father's voice. And after the accident, Marcus continued, his voice rough, it got worse. Because it was my fault. I was driving. I couldn't save your mother, and then I took your sight. Every time I look at you, I see my failures. Every time I try to talk to you, I'm terrified I'll say the wrong thing and push you further away. So you pushed me away first. Ethan whispered. Yes. The admission seemed to cost Marcus everything. I'm a coward, Ethan. I built an empire. I command boardrooms. I make million-dollar decisions without blinking. But when it comes to being your father, I'm completely lost. And instead of admitting that and asking for help, I threw money at the problem and hoped it would fix itself. Harper felt tears on her cheeks. This was the conversation they'd needed to have for months, but it was happening all wrong. Too raw, too painful, without any of the careful scaffolding that should have been in place. I don't want your money, Ethan said, his voice small now, exhausted. I just want my dad. Marcus made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I don't know how to be that person anymore. Your mother, she was the one who knew how to do this, how to connect, how to comfort. I was always the practical one, the provider, and now that's all I know how to be. Then learn. Ethan's hands had found the edge of the counter and were gripping it tightly. Learn how to be more than that. I had to learn how to exist in a completely different way. You can learn too. The challenge hung between them. Simple, devastating, impossible to ignore. Marcus closed the distance between them slowly, stopping right in front of his son. For a long moment, he just stood there, his hands raised halfway, unsure. Then carefully, hesitantly, he placed his hands on Ethan's shoulders. Ethan flinched but didn't pull away. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and his voice broke on the words. "I'm so sorry for everything, for the accident, for disappearing, for being too afraid to be the father you needed. You deserve so much better than what I gave you." Ethan's face crumpled. "I miss Mom. I know. God, I know I miss her too, every single day. And I'm scared all the time. Everything's so confusing and loud, and I don't know how to make sense of anything anymore. I know." Marcus pulled his son closer, awkwardly at first, then tighter as Ethan didn't resist. "I'm scared too. I'm terrified I've already lost you, that I've broken something that can't be fixed." "You haven't." Ethan's voice was muffled against his father's chest. "But you have to try, Dad. You have to actually try." "I will. I promise. No more hiding. No more pretending that money and professionals can replace me being present." Marcus looked up and met Harper's eyes over Ethan's head. There was gratitude there, but also shame. "Miss Quinn has shown me what it looks like to actually see you, to meet you where you are instead of trying to force you back to where you were. I need to learn from that." Harper wiped her eyes, her throat tight. "This isn't about me," she said softly. "This is about you two finding your way back to each other. But we couldn't have gotten here without you," Marcus said. "You created a safe enough space for him to be honest, to say the things he needed to say." Ethan pulled back slightly, his face still turned toward his father. "Harper helped me find my voice again, but you're the one who needs to hear it." Marcus nodded, his hands still on his son's shoulders, as if afraid to let go now that he'd finally reached out. "Then I'm listening, really listening. What do you need from me, Ethan? What can I do differently? Stop treating me like I'm broken. Stop hiring people to fix me. Stop watching from doorways like you're afraid to actually participate." Ethan's voice was steady now, clear. "I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be here. Really here." "Okay." Marcus's voice was raw but certain. "Okay, I can do that. I will do that. I will do." They stood there for a long moment, father and son, finally bridging the distance that had grown between them. Harper quietly moved toward the door, sensing they needed this space alone. "Miss Quinn," Marcus called softly. She turned. "Don't go far. We might need help with those cookies." It was a small thing, an almost laughable thing given the weight of everything that had just happened. But it was also everything, an acknowledgement that they were a team now, that this journey required all of them. Harper smiled through her tears. "I'll be in the living room. Call me when you're ready." As she left the kitchen, she heard Ethan say, "Dad, can you describe the park to me, the way Harper does?" There was a long pause. Then Marcus's voice, uncertain but trying. "The trees they're bare, brown branches against gray sky. I'm not very good at this." "That's okay," Ethan said gently. "You'll learn, just tell me what you see. What it reminds you of." And Marcus began to speak, his words halting and clumsy at first but growing more confident. He described the park, the city, the world outside their window. He described it not as a businessman, not as someone trying to fix a problem, but as a father trying to share his vision with his son. Harper sat in the living room, listening to their voices blend together, and felt something shift in the foundation of this fractured family. The cracks were still there. They'd take time to truly heal, but for the first time, they were being acknowledged, addressed, tended to with care. The cookies never did get finished that day, but something far more important was beginning to bake in the warmth of honesty and connection. Progress wasn't always forward. Sometimes it was a controlled demolition of walls that no longer served, making space for something stronger to be built. 2 months had passed since the kitchen confrontation, and the Whitmore household had transformed in ways that seemed impossible back in October. Marcus had restructured his entire work life, delegating more to his executive team, working from home 4 days a week, and most importantly, showing up for Ethan in ways that went beyond financial provision. But change, Harper had learned, was never linear, and the universe had a way of testing progress just when it seemed most solid. It started on a Tuesday morning in early December. Harper arrived at the penthouse at her usual time, 8 a.m., to find Marcus in the kitchen, still in his pajamas, staring at his laptop screen with an expression that made her stomach drop. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting down her bag. Marcus looked up and she saw exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "The London acquisition, the one I've been working on for 18 months. It's collapsing. The investors are pulling out, the board is in chaos, and I need to be on a plane tonight to salvage what's left of the deal." "How long would you be gone?" "A week? Maybe more." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as his tell for stress. "Harper, I can't lose this deal. It represents 3 years of planning, hundreds of jobs, the expansion that will secure the company's future for the next decade, but I promised Ethan that you'd be present." Harper finished quietly. "His birthday is Saturday." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "His 9th birthday, the first one since everything. I told him we'd spend the whole day together, that I'd take him to that restaurant he loves, the one with the open kitchen where he can hear everything being prepared. I promised." Harper moved to the coffee maker, buying herself a moment to think. Through the window, the early morning light was turning the city gold. Somewhere in this penthouse, Ethan was probably just waking up, unaware that his world was about to shift again. "What if you brought him with you?" she suggested. Marcus shook his head. "It's going to be 16-hour days of brutal negotiations, hotel conference rooms and hostile investors. That's not a birthday trip, that's a nightmare for a kid, especially one who—" He stopped himself. "Who's blind?" Harper said gently. "You can say it, Marcus, it's not a dirty word. I know, I've been trying so hard not to let his blindness be the reason I make decisions. But in this case, putting him through that kind of stress, in an unfamiliar place, with my attention divided, it would be cruel." Harper poured 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Marcus. "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know." He accepted the cup but didn't drink. "If I go, I break my promise to my son. If I don't go, I potentially destroy everything I've built professionally. 300 employees depending on me. Investors who've trusted me with millions. A company legacy that spans 20 years. "There's no good answer," Harper said. "No, there isn't." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the impossible choice hanging between them. Then they heard footsteps. Ethan, navigating the hallway with the confidence he'd developed over the past months. His hand trailed along the wall, counting the familiar landmarks, his step sure and steady. "Harper?" he called. "Are you here?" "Kitchen," she responded. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his dark hair sleep mussed, wearing the t-shirt with the textured design he preferred. He'd stopped wearing his sunglasses at home, and Harper could see his blue eyes, sightless but expressive, moving as if tracking sounds. "Dad's here too," he observed. "You're both quiet though. Something's wrong." Marcus and Harper exchanged glances. They'd learned not to hide things from Ethan. His other senses had sharpened considerably, and he could read emotional atmospheres like others read books. "Come sit down, buddy," Marcus said, pulling out a chair. Ethan navigated to the table with practiced ease and sat. "Just tell me, is someone sick? Did something happen?" "No one's sick," Marcus assured him. "But I have a work crisis, a big one. I need to go to London for a week, and I need to leave tonight." The silence that followed was deafening. Harper watched Ethan's face carefully, the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands gripped the edge of the table. "My birthday is Saturday," Ethan said, his voice carefully neutral. "I know." Marcus reached across the table, placing his hand over his son's. "Ethan, I know, and I hate this. I hate that I have to choose between being here for you and saving the company. But this deal, if it falls through, it's fine." Ethan's voice had gone flat. "You should go." "Ethan, no, really, it's fine. It's just a birthday, they happen every year." He pulled his hand away from his father's. "Besides, Harper will be here. She's better at this stuff anyway." The words were like knives, and Harper saw them land. Marcus flinched, his expression crumbling. "That's not fair," Marcus said quietly. "And it's not true. Harper is incredible, but she's not your parent. I am, and I want to be here. But you can't be." Ethan stood up, his movements jerky, uncoordinated in a way they hadn't been in weeks. "It's the same as before, Dad. When it matters, work comes first. You just got better at hiding it for a while. That's not what's happening here." Isn't it? Ethan's voice rose. You promised. You said things would be different. You said I could count on you. But the first time something important comes up with work, you're gone. Just like always. This isn't like before, Marcus insisted, standing as well. Before, I used work as an excuse to avoid being present. This time, I genuinely don't have a choice. If I don't go, the company could collapse. Do you understand what that means? It means your company is more important than me. Ethan's voice broke. It means I'm still not enough to make you stay. You're everything. Marcus's composure finally shattered. You're everything, Ethan. But I have responsibilities to hundreds of people, families who depend on the jobs I provide, investors who trusted me with their money. I can't just abandon all of that. But you can abandon me. That's not God, Ethan, that's not what this is. Harper knew she should step in, should mediate, but something told her this needed to play out. They were circling around a truth that needed to be spoken. When Mom was sick, Ethan said, his voice trembling, she asked you to take time off, to spend those last months with us. But you didn't. You said the Singapore deal was too important, that it was the foundation for our future. She died while you were in a boardroom presentation. The color drained from Marcus's face. How do you? I heard her crying on the phone with Aunt Rachel. I heard her say that you chose work over being with her when she needed you most. Tears were streaming down Ethan's face now. And now you're doing it again. You're choosing work over me. Marcus looked like he'd been struck. He reached for the counter to steady himself, his breathing ragged. Your mother. She told me she understood. She said what you needed to hear because she loved you. But it broke her heart, Dad. And you're breaking mine too. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Harper felt tears on her own cheeks, witnessing this family's deepest wound finally being exposed to light. Marcus sank back into his chair, his face in his hands. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. You're right, he said hoarsely, about all of it. I wasn't there for your mother when she needed me most, and I've spent every day since then drowning in regret. I thought if I worked hard enough, built something successful enough, it would somehow make up for my absence. But it doesn't, does it? Nothing can make up for not being there. Ethan stood frozen, his face a mask of pain and anger and desperate hope. The London deal, Marcus continued, his voice steadying with resolve. It matters, but it doesn't matter more than you. Nothing matters more than you. I'm calling Richard. He can handle the London negotiations. He's been my second in command for 15 years. It's time I trusted him with something this important. But I said a lot of things. About responsibilities and investors and the company legacy. Marcus stood, moving to stand directly in front of his son. But here's the truth. I've spent your entire life building an empire to leave to you someday. But what good is an empire if I've lost my son in the process? What's the point of securing a financial future if we don't have a relationship to build that future on? Ethan's voice was small, uncertain. You'd really stay? Even if it cost you everything? You are everything. The company, the deals, the money. They're all meaningless if I'm not the father you deserve. Marcus placed his hands gently on Ethan's shoulders. I failed your mother. I won't fail you. Not again. Not ever. For a long moment, Ethan didn't move. Then slowly, he leaned forward into his father's embrace. Marcus wrapped his arms around his son and held him like he was the most precious thing in the world, which Harper realized he was. What if they fire you? Ethan mumbled against his father's chest. Marcus actually laughed, the sound watery but genuine. They can't fire me. I own 60% of the company. Worst case, some investors get angry, the board lectures me and we lose a deal. Best case, Richard pulls off a miracle and becomes the hero. Either way, I'll be here Saturday, celebrating your birthday. Harper quietly moved toward the hallway, sensing they needed privacy. But Marcus called to her. Harper, wait. She turned. Thank you, he said simply, for teaching me what presence actually looks like, for showing me that my son doesn't need a perfect father. He just needs one who shows up. Harper smiled through her tears. You figured that out on your own. I just held up a mirror. She left them there, father and son, holding each other in the morning light. From the hallway, she could hear their voices. Marcus describing his plan for Ethan's birthday, Ethan's tentative excitement building, the sound of healing happening in real time. An hour later, Harper was in the living room reviewing some braille materials when Marcus emerged from his study, phone in hand, looking exhausted, but lighter somehow. It's done, he announced. Richard's on his way to London. The board is furious. My investors are threatening to pull out entirely. It's going to be a disaster. "And?" Harper prompted. "And I don't care." He laughed, the sound almost giddy with relief. "For the first time in my adult life, I chose family over work, and I don't care about the consequences. Is this what healthy priorities feel like? It's terrifying." "Welcome to parenthood," Harper said with a grin. Marcus sat down heavily on the couch. "The London deal might still fall apart. We might lose millions, my reputation might take a hit. But you know what? I'll still have my son, and that's worth more than any acquisition. He's going to remember this," Harper said softly. "Not the birthday party or the presents, this moment when you chose him over everything else. That's what he'll carry with him. I should have made that choice years ago. With Catherine, with him. You can't change the past. You can only change what happens next." Marcus nodded, staring out the window at the city that had consumed so much of his life. "You know what's funny? I spent 20 years building this company because I thought that's what made me valuable, what gave my life meaning. But watching Ethan these past few months, seeing him adapt and grow and fight his way back from darkness, that's real strength. That's real value. Everything I've done in business pales in comparison to what my son accomplishes every single day. Have you told him that?" "Not in so many words." "You should." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Marcus said, "Harper, when you first started here, I hired you because you could connect with Ethan in ways I couldn't. But you've done something more important than that. You've taught me how to connect with him myself, how to see beyond his blindness to who he really is. You've made yourself obsolete in the best possible way." Harper felt a flutter of panic. "Are you letting me go?" "God, no." Marcus looked horrified. "I'm saying thank you. Thank you for not just helping my son, but for helping me become the father he deserves. You're not obsolete. You're family now. If you want to be." The word hung in the air, warm and unexpected. "Family. I'd like that," Harper said softly. From the hallway they heard Ethan's voice. "Harper? Dad? Can we work on the birthday plans together? All three of us?" Marcus and Harper exchanged smiles. "We're coming," Marcus called back. As they walked toward the kitchen where Ethan waited, Harper felt the pieces of this fractured family finally clicking into place. There would still be challenges ahead. Healing was never simple or straightforward. But for the first time since she'd walked into that hotel lobby 3 months ago, she felt certain they would face those challenges together. Marcus had finally learned what Ethan had been trying to teach him all along. Presence wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, staying engaged, and choosing connection over convenience. And sometimes the most important deal you could make was the one with your own child, a promise to be there no matter what. Saturday morning arrived with unexpected snow, the first real snowfall of the season. Harper stood at the penthouse window watching fat flakes drift past the glass, thinking about how much had changed in just 4 months. The city below was transforming into something softer, quieter, as if the universe itself was marking this day as special. Behind her she could hear Marcus and Ethan in the kitchen, their voices blending in easy conversation as they prepared breakfast together. It was a sound that had become commonplace over the past week, but Harper still marveled at it. The silence that had once defined this home had been replaced with something warmer: laughter, questions, the comfortable rhythm of a family learning to exist together again. "Harper," Ethan called. "Dad's trying to flip pancakes and it's going terribly. You need to witness this." She smiled and headed toward the kitchen where she found Marcus standing at the stove with a spatula, looking both determined and slightly panicked. A pancake sat in the pan, one side golden brown, the other waiting to be flipped. "I can do this," Marcus muttered to himself. "It's just physics and timing." The last 3 ended up on the floor, Ethan informed Harper solemnly, though his grin betrayed his amusement. "James is going to find a pancake graveyard when he mops later." "I'm improving," Marcus protested. He attempted the flip. The pancake went up, rotated perfectly, and landed exactly where it should. "See? Nailed it." Ethan clapped, genuine delight on his face. "Okay, that was actually good. What did I tell you? Your old man still got some skills." Marcus slid the pancake onto a plate with perhaps too much pride for such a simple accomplishment. But Harper understood. This wasn't really about pancakes. It was about Marcus being present for the small, ordinary moments. It was about him learning to find joy in the mundane act of making breakfast with his son on a Saturday morning. They ate together at the kitchen island, Ethan carefully navigating his plate using the clock method Harper had taught him. Pancakes at 12 o'clock, fruit at 3, bacon at 9. Marcus described the snow falling outside, his descriptions more vivid now, more detailed. He was getting better at painting pictures with words. "So," Marcus said, setting down his fork. "Birthday boy, what's the plan for today?" Ethan's face lit up. "The restaurant at lunch, right? The one where I can hear everything?" "Absolutely. We have a reservation at Rue for noon. Chef Marie knows we're coming and she's prepared something special." Marcus paused. "But I was thinking, maybe we could do something else first. Something we haven't done in a long time." "What?" "Ice skating. At Rockefeller Center." The kitchen went silent. Harper saw Ethan's expression shift from excitement to fear, to something that looked like anger. "Dad, I can't ice skate, I'm blind." His voice had gone flat, defensive. "I know. That's not what I'm suggesting." Marcus leaned forward. "Before the accident, ice skating was your favorite thing. You used to beg your mom to take you every weekend in winter. You were fearless out there. That was before." Ethan's hands gripped the edge of the counter. "I can't do that anymore. I can't do a lot of things anymore." "You're right. You can't do it the same way, but that doesn't mean you can't do it at all." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "I thought maybe we could try it together. I'd be right there with you the whole time. We'd take it slow, figure it out as we go. What if I fall? Then I'll help you up. What if we both fall? That's different." "That was." Ethan's voice wavered. "That was who I used to be." Harper had been silent, letting this moment belong to father and son, but now she spoke up. "Ethan, can I tell you something I've learned?" He turned his face toward her voice. "What?" "The person you were before the accident isn't gone, he's just evolved. You're not a different person. You're the same person who's had to adapt to different circumstances. The things you loved before, the parts of yourself that made you you, they're still there. They just might look different now." "Ice skating seems impossible," Ethan said quietly. "So did navigating your own home," Harper reminded him. "So did cooking. So did going outside without having a panic attack. You've done impossible things every single day for months. This is just one more impossible thing." Marcus reached across and took his son's hand. "I'm not asking you to be who you were. I'm asking if you want to try something that used to make you happy in a new way. If it's terrible, we'll leave. If you hate it, we never have to do it again. But Ethan, I'd really like to try. With you." The vulnerability in Marcus's voice was unmistakable. This wasn't just about ice skating. This was about Marcus trying to reclaim pieces of the life they'd lost, to build new memories on top of the painful ones. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Harper could see him working through it. The fear, the desire, the what-ifs. Finally, he said, "Okay, we can try. But if I completely embarrass myself, then we'll be embarrassed together," Marcus promised. "I haven't ice skated in 3 years. I'll probably fall on my ass within the first 5 minutes." "Language," Ethan said, but he was smiling. Rockefeller Center was already crowded when they arrived an hour later. The famous Christmas tree towered above the rink, its lights twinkling even in daylight. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts and hot chocolate. Music played from speakers hidden somewhere in the architecture. It was overwhelming. Sounds and smells and the chaotic energy of hundreds of people celebrating the season. Harper felt Ethan tense beside her as they approached. His hand found her arm, gripping tightly. "Too much?" she asked quietly. "A lot," he admitted. "But I can handle it." They got their skates and found a bench. Marcus knelt in front of Ethan, helping him lace up, his movements careful and patient. Harper noticed other families watching, some with curiosity, some with pity. Marcus noticed too, and she saw his jaw tighten. "Let them stare," he said quietly to Ethan. "We're not here for them." On the ice, Marcus kept one arm firmly around Ethan's waist, the other holding his hand. They moved slowly, so slowly that other skaters had to navigate around them. Some looked annoyed, most looked understanding. "The ice is smooth," Marcus narrated as they inched forward. "We're about 10 feet from the edge. There's a little girl in a pink jacket to our left doing spins. A teenager just fell behind us, he's laughing about it. The tree is straight ahead. Its lights reflect off the ice like stars." Ethan's free hand reached out, feeling the cold air move past him. His movements were tentative at first, his body rigid with fear. But slowly, gradually, Harper saw him begin to relax. His skating motion became more natural, more confident. "I remember this," Ethan said, wonder in his voice. "The feeling of gliding, the cold air, the way your muscles have to work to stay balanced." "You're doing great," Marcus encouraged. "Want to try going a little faster? Maybe just a little?" They picked up speed incrementally. Marcus never let go, never let Ethan feel unsupported. They made one full lap around the rink, then another. By the third lap, Ethan was actually laughing. "This is insane," he said, his face flushed with cold and exhilaration. "I can't believe I'm actually ice skating." "You're doing more than skating," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're flying, buddy." Harper watched from the edge of the rink, recording short videos on her phone that she knew they'd all treasure later. She watched this father and son reclaiming something they'd thought was lost forever. She watched them building a new normal from the ashes of their old life. After 45 minutes, they took a break. Ethan's cheeks were red from cold and exertion, his hair sticking up in odd angles from his winter hat. He looked more alive than Harper had ever seen him. "That was incredible," he said, accepting a cup of hot chocolate from Harper. "Can we do it again? Like regularly? Every Saturday if you want," Marcus promised. "We'll become skating experts. I'll even learn to do those spin things the little girl in pink was doing." "Please don't, you'll break something." "Fair point." They sat on the bench drinking hot chocolate, watching other skaters glide past. Ethan's head was tilted slightly, tracking sounds. The scrape of blades on ice, children's laughter, the music shifting from one song to another. "Dad?" Ethan said after a while. "Yeah? This is the best birthday I've ever had, and we haven't even gotten to lunch yet." Marcus's eyes grew shiny. He pulled his son close, kissing the top of his head. "We're just getting started, buddy. We're just getting started." Lunch at Rue was everything Ethan had hoped for. Chef Marie had prepared a special tasting menu, describing each dish in detail as she presented it. She explained the sizzle of searing meat, the crack of creme brulee being torched, the gentle bubble of risotto being stirred. For Ethan, it was a concert of culinary sounds, each one telling a story. Marcus had arranged for them to sit at the chef's counter, where Ethan could hear everything happening in the open kitchen. The clang of pans, the sharp calls of orders being placed, the rhythmic chop of knives on cutting boards. It created a symphony that Ethan conducted with his attention, pointing out different sounds and asking questions about what created them. "This," Ethan declared around a mouthful of perfectly cooked salmon, "is what food is supposed to be. Not just taste, experience." Chef Marie beamed at him. "You have the soul of a chef, young man. You understand that cooking is about all the senses, not just sight." After lunch, they walked through Central Park, despite the cold. Marcus and Harper took turns describing the winter landscape, the way snow clung to bare branches, the tracks left by adventurous joggers, the dogs playing in the first real accumulation of the season. They stopped at Bethesda Fountain, where street musicians were playing jazz despite the weather. Ethan stood still, listening, his face tilted up toward the sky as if he could feel the music falling with the snow. "Do you remember coming here with Mom?" Marcus asked quietly. Ethan nodded. "She loved the street musicians. She always made us stop and listen for at least one complete song. Said it was important to appreciate art that people made just for the joy of making it. She was right about that. She was right about a lot of things." "Do you think?" Ethan hesitated. "Do you think she'd be proud of us? Of how we're doing now?" Marcus's voice was rough when he answered. "I think she'd be proud of you, absolutely. You've shown more courage and resilience than most adults could manage. As for me," he paused, "I think she'd be relieved that I finally figured out what matters. It took me too long, but I got there eventually. Better late than never," Ethan said, echoing something his mother used to say. They stood together listening to the music, letting the snow gather on their shoulders. Harper hung back, giving them space, but Ethan reached out and grabbed her hand, pulling her into their circle. "You're part of this too," he said simply. "You're part of us." Harper felt tears freeze on her cheeks. "I'm honored to be." That evening back at the penthouse, they had cake, chocolate with raspberry filling, Ethan's favorite. They sang Happy Birthday slightly off key. Ethan blew out 9 candles with one breath, his wish unspoken but written clearly on his peaceful face. The presents Marcus had chosen were perfect. Not expensive for the sake of expense, but thoughtful. A professional Braille embosser so Ethan could create his own books and labels. A high-end audio recording setup so he could start the podcast he'd been talking about creating. A weighted blanket that provided the deep pressure input he found calming. But the best gift came last. Marcus pulled out a small box, his hands slightly trembling as he handed it to Ethan. "This was your mother's," he said quietly. "I've been holding on to it, waiting for the right time. I think now is that time." Ethan's fingers carefully opened the box and found a bracelet inside. His fingers traced the design, smooth beads interspersed with charms. "Mom's charm bracelet," he whispered. "She wore this every day." "Every single day," Marcus confirmed. Each charm represents something important to her. There's a book because she loved reading, a tiny house because family was everything, a star because she said you were her shining light. Ethan's fingers found the star charm, tracing its points over and over. Why are you giving this to me now? Because I realized I've been holding on to pieces of her, trying to keep her memory alive by keeping her things locked away. But that's not how memory works. She'd want you to have this. She'd want you to carry her with you, literally and figuratively. Marcus fastened the bracelet around Ethan's wrist. It was slightly too large, but Ethan didn't seem to care. He held his arm up, listening to the gentle sound the charms made as they moved. "Thank you, Dad," he said, his voice breaking. "This is thank you." They held each other for a long moment, and Harper saw the final wall between them crumble. This wasn't just about grief anymore. This was about honoring the past while building toward the future. Later, after cake and presents and too much sugar, after Ethan had finally gone to bed exhausted and happy, Marcus and Harper sat in the living room. The city lights twinkled through the windows, reflecting off the snow that continued to fall. "He's going to be okay," Marcus said, more to himself than to Harper. "We're going to be okay." "You already are okay," Harper replied. "You've been okay for a while now, you just needed to believe it." Marcus turned to look at her. "When you walked into that hotel lobby 4 months ago, I was drowning. I'd convinced myself that providing financially was enough, that I could buy my way out of grief and guilt. You showed me that presence is the only currency that actually matters. You did the hard work, Marcus. I just held up a mirror. You did more than that. You saved us. Both of us." He paused, then added carefully, "I know this started as a job, but I hope you know that you're family now. Real family. Not because I'm paying you, but because you've become essential to who we are." Harper felt warmth spread through her chest. "I know, and you're both family to me too. This was supposed to be a stopgap job until I figured out my real career, but I think I've found something more important than a career. I've found purpose." "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "With us, I mean. Do you stay? Do we keep going the way we have been?" "I stay," Harper said without hesitation, "for as long as you both need me. Ethan's journey isn't over. He's still learning, still adapting. And honestly, so are you. You've come a long way, but there's still work to do. Healing isn't linear. There will be hard days ahead, but we'll face them together." "Together," Harper confirmed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow transform the city into something magical. Somewhere in the penthouse, Ethan was sleeping peacefully, his mother's bracelet on his wrist, his father's love finally something he could trust again. 4 months ago, Harper had been a hostess on her first day, desperate for any job that would pay the bills. She'd had no idea that stopping to help a screaming child would change the trajectory of her entire life. But that was the thing about connection. It transformed everyone it touched. Ethan had learned that blindness didn't define him. Marcus had learned that presence mattered more than perfection. And Harper had learned that sometimes the most important work you could do was simply showing up and bearing witness to other people's struggles. The Whitmore family was still healing. They probably always would be in some way. Grief didn't disappear and trauma left permanent marks. But they were healing together now, and that made all the difference. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in quiet white. Inside the penthouse, 3 people who'd been strangers months ago had become something more profound. A family forged not by blood, but by choice, compassion, and the hard work of showing up for each other day after day. And in the morning when Ethan woke up, Marcus would be there to describe the snow-covered park. Harper would be there to help plan the day. They would navigate whatever challenges came their way. Together, always together. Because that's what family did. They showed up. They stayed present. They loved through the darkness until they found the light on the other side. And sometimes, just sometimes, that was enough to save everyone.